Hey guys, welcome to the Warrior's Path podcast. We are continuing in a series of shows on the rules of engagement or life's rules of engagement. This is the last one, which is number 8, and we're going to be talking about cultivating financial literacy. Today we're talking about financial literacy or cultivating financial literacy. My story in regards to that probably got started in the early 90s. I got some education in school from parents, but not a lot. You know, the system isn't necessarily designed to raise you to a high level. It's pretty much just to get you to a point to where you can get by. So it's important to educate yourself. And at that time, I didn't know that. I didn't have that mindset. And I was working in a martial arts academy, and I was teaching a lot of private lessons during the day. We had classes mainly at night, and I was at the academy all day long. This is a period of my life when I lived there. And, I had a large block of time during the day, and I wanted to make some extra money. So I did the natural thing. I'll start offering private lessons. So during the day, a lot of the people that would come in for those private lessons were business owners, or they had the type of job where they could come in before lunch or in the afternoon after lunch. And one of those individuals was a local entrepreneur, business owner, and he was a dentist. And he owned 4 or 5 dentist offices in the city. And he had grown this business to this level. And he was to the level where, he actually was doing 3 or 4 privates a week. I mean, he loved it as much as I did. I got just as much out of training with him most of the time as he got out of training with me. But after a certain amount of time, curiosity as to how he could afford that and afford the time to do it. And, he shared with me what he had built. And I have always been a perpetual white belt, and you don't know what you don't know. So right away, I knew I wanted to ask this guy to start teaching me what he knew. And I asked him to become a mentor. And we ended up just trading out time. I would train him, and a lot of times on Fridays and Saturdays, if I had a little free time, I would get with him and he would teach me. And it was one of the most influential relationships I've had in my life. He not only taught me different things about money, but he also taught me the mindset of money, how to look at it, how to approach it. He changed the way I felt about money. And that is something I've carried with me throughout my life. So he was a very influential mentor. And one of the things he introduced me to was a concept of having a filter to make decisions around. Now, I teach this to this day, and I've altered it obviously in the last 20 or 30 years to fit my needs. I refer to this filter as the master filter. And I teach it quite often when I am coaching with the Warrior's Path program. And there's different areas. The fundamental areas are going to be health, purpose, finance, freedom, and family. So the purpose of the master filter is any decision you make, any plan you're making, you use the filter to make sure you're keeping balance in all of these areas. Now, they're not limited to these areas. Obviously, You can add sections to them if you need to. I've got clients now, I introduce the fundamental master filter to them, and they say, I would like to add a section about this because it is important to me. And that is absolutely fine. This is just the baseline. And one of the prominent ones on there is finance, um, understanding money, and furthering your education in that topic. Because, money will do a great thing for you. And this is actually a section on the master filter. We say freedom. But one of the things that has a huge effect on freedom is money and your understanding of money, how you handle finances. And, that gets you to the point, hopefully, if you handle it correctly, of achieving financial autonomy, freedom. And we include freedom on the master filter because, like we said, if we're making a decision, someone makes a job offer, and I've got to weigh out the pros and cons of this offer and see, is this something I want to do? Well, one of the main sections on there for me is, how does this affect freedom? Is it going to take more of my time, more of my life units? And if it does, let's say I have to invest a lot more time into this opportunity, is it something that's going to maintain that level of investment of your time moving into the future? Is it always going to involve that much time? Or if you put in effort and you build whatever this thing is, does it ultimately create freedom in the long run? So an example of this would be like a regular job. You said, I'm going to work 40 hours a week every week, and that's the way it's going to be from this point forward. It's not going to change. So I know that I'm going to give 40 hours, 40 life units from my tally every week. So if I'm looking at that through that decision-making tool, I may say, that's not for me. Now, I don't mind investing it on the front end. I might even invest 3 times as much, but I can see into the future that it's going to give me more freedom, or as the financial machine or revenue stream grows, it gives me an opportunity to invest less time. So that is an example of how you would use that filter. And I've had decisions like this in life. I've actually given up major businesses in life that was creating money for me because, getting into them initially, they were a great idea. And, they were doing okay. But one, they pretty much had matured to the level they were going to stay. And when I stood back and looked at it through this lens, I realized it's always going to take this much of my life from me as long as I'm involved. And if I quit investing life or time, it stops. So it just didn't fit into the long-term scheme. Now, I might have to move on and create some other things that did, but that is an example of how to use the master filter to make those decisions. And that's one of the reasons why freedom is on there as a prominent fundamental of that filter. And whenever you are lining up any life goals, you ask, what is its effect going to be on my levels of freedom? Because for me, one of my goals is I wanted more freedom as I got later into the journey. I didn't mind investing a tremendous amount of time and energy in the beginning, but I knew as I started to get older, I would like to have more freedom to do more of what I want to do, whether it be training, travel, building additional business. So that's one of the things I was looking for. And I got this whole mindset from that mentor. He's the one that changed the way I looked at setting those things up. And, working with him, he introduced me to a couple of different things. I was going to run through those just as examples. And these can be things that if you've never looked into it, you've never studied it, you can add it to a self-education system. The self-education system is another tool that I teach along with the master filter. You are in charge of your own education, period. and it has a direct influence on how successful you're going to be in life. I'm not going to give that power to any system or entity. It's not that you can't get information from those groups, schools, academies. It's just that ultimately you are in charge of it. And that's for the best, because you'll always do a better job than other people will do on that educational journey. So, money 101. What is financial literacy? And it's pretty much just refers to the knowledge, skills, and understanding of financial concepts and principles, basically. And I want to run through a few of them, like I said, that I was introduced to. One of the first ones was budgeting. And at that time, I wasn't real good at it. And I mean, I didn't even give it a second thought. I was making really good money, and I was blowing every bit of it training, which I don't regret because I got an opportunity to train with some great people over the years. But if I sit back now and think about how much money I put into it, it's a lot. And that's one of the first things he noticed, was that I had no clue of how to budget money or live below my means. And so that's the first concept he introduced me to, is actually sitting down and making a plan, and build it around what is coming in. And he introduced me to ideas that I needed to be investing or directing money to on the side, even in small amounts. And at the first, it was small amounts, and he didn't care. An example of that may be putting $5 into savings every month, which is nothing. But at the time, he knew he was teaching me to start the habit of doing that thing. And that once I started seeing the result come back from it, I would start taking more interest in it and investing more financial means in it, and which is exactly what I did. But at first, it was just create the habit, even if it's a small amount. And like I said, the big second part of that is just living below your means. Looking at the amount of money you put out and what you spend money on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. Are there things that I can back off of? Are there things that I can not do? And, you know, when you have an understanding too that a lot of finance and business building takes time, a lot of it'll never come quick. It's always going to be a long term goal. And once you see that, you understand that these small steps that you're taking are going to have a huge effect in the long run. And so, budgeting and living below your means. The next thing would be savings, understanding the strategies of saving money. And for me, that would include additionally having an emergency fund. I didn't really hear about this. We didn't even call it an emergency fund at that time. He just said, look, I need you to put this money off to the side. Just do it. And, that was one of the things he would have me direct funds into on a monthly basis until it would reach a certain amount. And then, obviously later, life threw a couple of curveballs, and I understood why it was sitting there. And it was something that I've maintained ever since. So, understanding how to save money, and additionally, understanding how to set up an emergency fund. Huge lesson was compound interest. At that time, I knew a little of it, but I was never formally educated in it until he worked with me on it. And two of the big things he wanted me to understand was compound interest and its effects on savings accounts and its effects on loans. And it was a huge eye opener for me that you could go in and get a loan for, let's say, a car, $20,000, just as a number to work with. And if you just pay the minimal amount, the minimal payment that is required, which is a very common thing, you'll end up paying double, if not triple, the amount of money that that vehicle is worth. Now, this holds true for a home or anything that you're getting a loan on for compound interest. So, once you look at what you're having to pay in the long run for convenience. Sometimes, there's a few small things you can do to lessen the impact of that. And you want to understand what those things are. You want to study them and be able to use them to your advantage. Investing. Again, this is something that wasn't really taught in school. And I didn't learn a lot of it from my family resources either. I was first introduced to it by my mentor. And, he wanted, I remember specifically, he used to teach on a easel pad in his living room. And I remember him writing up there a few things. And one was understanding stocks, understanding bonds, commodities, mutual funds, collectibles like baseball cards or collecting coins, private equity, and the options of investing in other people's endeavors or businesses. Now, these are just a few. Just to mention a list, if you've never thought about it, and this is something that you can look into yourself and educate yourself on, and this list will get longer, but those are some of the fundamentals as far as I was concerned. Understanding debt management and the different types of debt, and understanding the strategies to deal with them. Now, this was a good lesson for me at that time because I had debt. Um, and that was one of his questions: bring it to me, let me see what you have. And he taught me how to set up a system that didn't take a huge bite out of me on a regular basis, but still started to deal intelligently with that debt and managing it correctly. And the damages of maintaining it as well, which I didn't understand at that time. He educated me on. So debt management. Next is just credit cards and your credit score, how they work, what are their relations to your economic success, how are they going to affect you, um, how to manipulate and either how to grow your credit score if you don't have one. And at that time, I had a few credit cards. I'll be honest, I didn't even pay attention to it at that time, and it probably showed. And he, as one of the things that he started to help me fix and work on. Next would be just banking and financial institutions, understanding their services, their fees, and how they work, which leads to choosing the right institution to work with. What do you look for when you're going to pick one out? What makes a good one? What makes a bad one? When you are entering into the entrepreneurial space, it becomes even more important to understand taxes and how they're going to affect you, what you can write off, different ways to take care of payments according to what type of business you have set up. Huge area. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. The main thing I want to do is just awareness, if you've never thought about it. Insurance. And for me, I talk a lot about the difference between self-defense and self-protection. This falls under self-protection. Having the proper insurance and how to set it up correctly to protect yourself. And it's important to have those layers of protection available to you. Retirement planning, how to deal with 401ks, IRAs, those sorts of things, which goes right back to your understanding of compound interest. At that time, I could have cared less. And I was working in a martial arts academy, so I didn't have one set up. And that's one of the things he introduced to me, taught me how to set it up, and made it, at the time, it wasn't a lot, but it doesn't have to be if you get a early start in life on it. Very important thing to consider once you start setting this up and educating yourself on it. Estate planning. Obviously, this is something that'll become more important later in life, especially when you get to the point when you start to do different types of investments, if they include land and different financial products that are available, mortgages, loans, understanding their fees, the structure, how they're set up, how they affect you, And a lot of times that understanding could be adjustments in payment. This is something that he introduced to me, both of car payments. Later on, I applied it to home payments. Being able to make an additional payment just once a year, and the huge effect that has on the amount of your payoff time, which ultimately will influence what you pay total for whatever you're investing in. And so all of this at first was just mind tools for me, but eventually started to create and cultivate a financial mindset that I carried with me through life, still used to this day. Um, and so that can be quite a bit. That's quite a lot. And part of that financial mindset is just understanding your financial responsibility. And we mentioned this one earlier. You are in charge of it. No one else is. Own it. If it's not in a good place, don't blame it on someone else. You have the ability to take control over it. Understanding how to set up goals around that mindset. Understanding delayed gratification. This is a huge one. It's not something that's going to happen quickly. These are a lot of times lifelong plans. And, not all of them. As you start to get more into the position where you can more intelligently invest, more short-term returns can start to happen. Adaptability and your resilience. Just like anything else in life, setbacks are going to come. Challenges are going to come. Have a method to deal with them. Have a system set up for it. And when I say a system, have a financial system set up for it. And earlier we mentioned having an emergency fund. I actually developed two of them. One was like your everyday emergency fund. If something were to happen at the house with the car and I had to take care of it, the emergency fund can deal with it. But I also have like a fund set up for incidents that can happen financially, which has happened. It also can be set aside for opportunities that will come up. Sometimes you will be presented with opportunities that will require investment. And if you've had this account set up, the funds will be available to you. And all of this comes down to just risk management and understanding that there are risks involved with this, as in anything in life, and being prepared for that risk. Being frugal and living below your means. We discussed this one earlier. It is a huge skill to, I know buddies that over the years at their job, they'll get a huge raise. And they're already spending that money before they ever get that next check. And their means that they live under increases due to that amount. Instead of just maintaining where they're at and then starting to invest that new income intelligently, which in the long run will create that freedom we're looking for ultimately. Having that long-term perspective is part of that mindset. Continuously learning. I'm a big proponent of self-education in all of these areas. It is a mindset that will not fail you, and it will make you successful in the long run, and ultimately get you to financial independence or our financial autonomy. Okay, so what we talk about, understanding money and how it can give you freedom. To me, this is one of the ultimate principles. If I were to go back and point out everything we talked about, creating that freedom in life to ultimately do what you want to do, whether it's training, travel, whatever. And it will also allow you to have better experiences in life. Once you have the freedom, if you've set up those financial machines correctly, you're going to have additional funds to have better experiences. I would also point out when we discuss the self-education, that is huge, and it never ends. The more you go, the farther you go with that, whether it be, just finance or anything, whatever you're investing that time of education into will come back tenfold. And I would say one more thing is to have a mentor. It's a time saver. I do this now. For years, I loved having mentors, and I would talk to people. They were in positions that I wanted to be. They were doing things I wanted to do, and I would say, "Hey, will you mentor me? Will you work with me?" But I never was to the point where I would pay for that. And you would hear this commonly: hire a coach for that type of thing. And this is something that I've gotten into more in the last 2 or 3 years. And I've got to say, I wish I was doing it 10 years ago. I wish I was doing it 20 years ago. It's definitely worth the investment in the amount of time it saves, which ultimately comes back to what we were discussing earlier: freedom. Okay, guys, hopefully you got some value out of that today. I'll see you at the next one. All right, guys, just a quick break to talk about some of the products that we're offering over at the website. One of the main things that we've grown this year are the video archives. We now have one for the Living Mechanics Jiu Jitsu program. We have another one for the Warriors Path Self Improvement program. And we just recently added one for the Civilian Tactical Training program, which is a self defense program. Additional to that, we are doing a lot of events this next year, hosted events. Most of the time when I teach, I'll have private groups, agencies that will bring me in, and they're not necessarily open to the public. And we've been getting a lot of requests for more public training. So this year, we are putting together more of them. You can find those on the website in the upcoming events page. Guys, if you are getting value out of this show, please like and subscribe. Also, if you know someone that might benefit from the show, please share us with them and help us grow our audience. It helps us help more people out there in the world. Thank you.